Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Nips. We're doing Healing Sentences Made Simpler, Finding the Love in Systems. Uh, Here it is June 22nd, Tuesday morning, and I will be guiding you through this work today. It's good to have you all. Thank you for being here. Um, we're all Zoom pros now. Just a little bit of orientation, bottom left-hand corner on a computer. Again, by now on iPad or phone, you know where these functions are. Um, uh, Mute and unmute, uh, normal Zoom etiquette to keep ourselves muted unless we're speaking. Chat, feel free to use the chat, except when I'm doing constellations, I'm highly distractible. So I ask, unless there's a real emergency, to hold off on chat at those times. Um, and if you chat something that's really important and I miss it because it's multitasking, um, we're a small enough group. Just find a good time to raise your hand, so to speak, and let me know you have something you need to share. This is a good time to play with the chat. We're systemic workers, or at least people who are interested in systems. And groups like to know who we are and where we're from. It's just one of the things that sets systems at ease. So just take a moment with the chat, put your name in and where in the world you are zooming in from. It's always fun. And not only put in your own, but read the others. I'm not going to read them all, but read them, feel where people are around the world. I'm in Northern California, Oakland, across the bay from San Francisco. So go ahead and start putting those in. The other thing you might want to play around with today, as usual with constellations on Zoom, is the upper right-hand corner, the screen view. Most of us are familiar with that, either the speaker view or the gallery view, the Hollywood Squares view. So feel free to toggle that in a way that works for you. India, woohoo! I'm so sorry how things are in India right now. I know it's really difficult there. We've got a lot of folks from across the United States. We got a couple of people in the UK, Ireland. This is awesome. Got people from all over. We don't have the Australians and New Zealanders and Hong Kongers today because it's the middle of the night for them. They'll probably show up for tomorrow's gathering. So keep reading those as they pop in. It's nice to see those. It gives us a sense of coming together a little bit. Outline of the workshop, typical kind of thing. There's going to be some lecture, mostly front-ended, some demos, some small group practice for you to start getting a feel for producing healing sentences on the fly. Everything's voluntary. If you don't want to participate in the small groups, that's just fine. I really recommend that you do. I'll say a word about that later, with a very short break in the middle for a bio break. If you've got to take a break, I invite you to take care of your needs. Yeah. Little bit of a group agreement. When it comes to constellation work, this is not, we're not doing full length personal constellations here. Nonetheless, there are going to be times when we're doing vulnerable work together. And so it's really important when you're doing that in constellations to set the container and have a bit of an explicit group agreement. So this is some of the things I'm asking for the group, and then I'll ask if you're on board. If you want to represent today, there are not going to be many opportunities for that, but if you do want to, and you know what that means, and if you don't worry about that. But if you know what that means, you need to have privacy, video, and a small place in which to stand and to be decently front lit, okay? Unless you're mobility impaired, in which case sitting is also just fine. Please remember, tech can be glitchy. I ask for our shared patience if that arises, particularly going into small groups. That seems to be the moment Zoom can be funny. So invite our patience if we have any tech glitches. I cannot troubleshoot for you locally. If you're having internet problems, please understand I'm managing a whole group and I can't slow down to help you manage an audio problem or an internet problem. So shared patience about glitchy tech issues. Many of you have worked mostly with other constellation facilitators. The nice thing you will notice is that we have a shared practice. There is a thing called constellations that is common to us all. However, it comes in a lot of different sizes and shapes and expressions and formats and styles and personalities, yeah? Um, and that might mean that what I do today seems utterly in line with what you've seen before, or it might look quite different. I invite you, if it's the latter, to be curious about that. It might not even be your cup of tea, which is cool, right? I mean, most of us have experienced facilitators and we've said, that's not my thing. That's okay. Just let me captain the ship today on behalf of the work that we're up to today, learning about healing sentences. It is my plan that mostly this is a learning workshop. You're going to be learning about healing sentences. But I also hope you have a good personal experience, maybe some movements and shifts. That would be awesome. Yeah. To support that, just a couple of things. One, please understand for a workshop like this, your movements may be partial or not fully resolved or halfway. Yeah. So just sort of decide to be okay about that. It may be something you get to start, but not finish today. Okay?
Sleepy boy. Sleepy boy today.
And I'm hearing someone talking. I'm going to mute that person. Thank you. Um, the other thing about that is that in order to support what I'm doing today, it's really helpful if there isn't a lot of coming and going or multitasking. Zoom sometimes kind of different kinds of Zoom things we go to, like we're going to pop in, we're going to pop out, that kind of thing. It can really disturb the flow of kind of what we're up to here. Now, some of you may have something that needs to take you away for a little while. I totally get that. I just ask if you don't need to do that, I recommend you not. And if you do need to do it in kind of a low-key kind of a way, have your ear attuned to when a small group might be coming up, because that might not be the time you want to join in a small group, or it might not be the time you want to leave. Yeah. Small group time is the most difficult for me when people are kind of coming and going. So I ask for your cooperation around that. And you'll be glad you stayed for the whole thing if you're able to do that. Okay. I have put some thought into the process. Confidentiality. Some of you may know each other. Yeah. You may be colleagues. So please hold the details that you hear today in confidence. The only people that I'm sharing this recording with is all of you. Okay. And we're not going to be recording the small group stuff at all. Okay, so if you hear something confidential in there, please hold it confidential. I think of it of how we show reverence and respect to the sacred circle after the sacred circle is done. Even though this is the holy grid, it's a type of sacred circle. Yeah, circle work. Yeah, so just hold that with respect later on. Recording. You may notice I am recording. Take that into account if you decide to volunteer in any way today for a demo. Are you up for that? Or what kind of thing you offer to work on. Just please notice that we're recording, okay? And again, continuing to participate implies your consent with that. That's it. Raise your hand, and I know some people don't have their video on yet, so in some way use either your physical hand or the Zoom hand. I'd like to see everybody's actual assent to this. So please raise your hand or the Zoom hand. V, if you are able to let me know that you are on board with the agreement at some point. I don't know if you are present right now, but when you can, I'm on board. Excellent, great. Okay, so I'm going to invite you into something. We're actually going to I'm going to do a sizable lecture, but not immediately. We're going to start out with some doing. Okay, so this is something to grease your wheels. Okay. It might be helpful to have pen and paper nearby, which most of you probably have because this is a learning workshop anyway. But I want to invite you to, this is so that later on you're not deer in the headlights about this. I want you to start brainstorming 3 to 5 small chunk issues in your life. Okay? And this is probably not the lifelong clinical depression necessarily. It may be that you've been trying to declutter your closets for the last 3 years, and every time you look at it, you say, screw this, and you go and eat a pound cake. I don't know. If I want to give an example from my life, I've been thinking about moving from Oakland for years, and I am stuck in indecisiveness about where and when. That's a really good example. I'm not suffering greatly from it, but I sure am stuck. So it's got something that has some weight. Could be a conflict with a sibling, something that's stuck in your business, something that's stuck in your household. It could be, the other thing is like, full disclosure, I think I have some bonkers menopause issues. Okay? I have some symptoms that they haven't quite been able to figure out yet. That's a good thing. Okay? So I want you to brainstorm 3 to 5 of these. And you'll get to work on at least one of them today, probably more. Because we need some fodder for the healing sentences work we're going to be doing, okay? And just state it in a sentence or 2 or 3. You don't have to be a perfectionist about it. You know, I want to declutter my filthy, overloaded closets, but every time I look at them, I feel a little panic and I go eat something instead. It doesn't even have to be the enlightened. In fact, I prefer you to not have the enlightened version. I will not give myself permission to have a clean closet in honor of my father. Like, just drop all that stuff. Okay? Just the observables. What you notice about the stuck thing. Okay? So you don't need to like produce them in an instant. You're going to have a few minutes here. And even if some may pop up in an hour. Yeah. So start writing some of those down.
Leslie, I have a quick question.
Sure, Susan.
Do we state them in the negative, like the problem, or do you state them like what we want, like to exercise regularly? Doesn't matter.
It should have like it should have some of the problem in it.
Okay,
Like,
so
I'm
write the
not
problem.
exercising regularly, and I really want to, which has both the positive and the negative in it, right? Yeah, but we need to hear a little bit about what's stuck. Yeah. Okay. Again, by the way, in order to learn, I want to invite everybody to sort of greet your inner perfectionist. Say, hello, inner perfectionist, and all the things you do to try and help me out. I'm going to give you the next 3 hours off. Go play. Okay? You can go play perfectly, but I'm going to give you a few hours off. Okay? In a nice, friendly way. Don't, shame your inner perfectionist. But let this be messy. Let this be a little. In order to get to really good healing sentences, you need to be able to muck around a bit. Okay. So, on to the first doing. I want to demo a little bit. So, anyone got one of these ready? Just raise your hand. Susan's got one. Excellent. Would you name it in 1 to 3 sentences?
I just, I don't exercise at all anymore. I think it would help me a lot. It's something for most of my life I did every day without thought, hesitation, a lot of enjoyment. And it's been some years where it's gotten worse, where
Okay.
I just literally don't even walk around the block.
Okay, good. So as I do this with Susan and a couple of others, everyone else has an assignment. Please be listening, but also feel Susan's or the other people's system. What does that mean? The garbage truck comes up the hill. I'm going to put on my earbuds. I don't know what that means, but it really is, we're doing a constellation. It's what's often called chair work or systemic coaching. We're not setting up a constellation, but her system is completely accessible. Okay, so I'm going to ask some follow-up questions, not too many, because we're not going down the road of, right, trying to heal all this or do a constellation on this. I just need a few follow-up questions in order to get us a little bit more of a sense of the system. Yeah? You might ask different questions, that's fine. But in trying to get a hold of this healing sentences stuff, it's about stepping into the client's system with them. Okay? A part of it. Okay, Susan. Let me just ask the obvious question, and you can keep yourself unmuted. Did something happen? Did you get sick and you stopped exercising? You had a major breakup and you stopped exercising? Any obvious life event? It's just an obvious question, right, folks? Yeah.
When I moved to London, I was like traveling to different country every week for work. So that's, where it started, where I just like literally didn't have the time.
And then it feels like it became a habit.
Yeah, like since the time I was a kid till, that point, all my life, I literally had exercise every day. It was just so kind of until London. And then there were different points where I exercised more or less in different spurts. But I think more recently it's because I've been.
Yep. Nope. I'm going to interrupt there.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt there. Okay. Because now we're getting some story about why she's not exercising. And I'm going to
Well, I think this is actually a relevant thing about now. So I'm just going to share is that.
I am going to invite into brevity. Okay.
Okay. I'll just say, I was trying to get pregnant and someone had advised, don't just be calm. Don't move too much. Like if you do this or that, it could, especially in the first trimester, you could lose the baby. So I think that's the more recent iteration.
Did you get pregnant?
I've been pregnant many times and I've lost many.
Oh shit.
Pregnancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So there's a lot here. Can you all feel it? I don't have it nailed down, but you can feel it. So I want to share my process. I'm feeling two things. Obviously, the grief of the miscarriages. I mean, we can feel that. But I have to share something, Susan. When you talked about I exercised every day my whole life, and then I didn't. There was a little sub-identity that went, phew, glad I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah? Like there's a little bit of relief. I had to do this every day and now I finally don't have to. That's something you want to be on the lookout for, feeling these unexpected, because that's not part of the story. She wants to exercise.
Are you saying that was what you sensed into?
It's one of the things I sensed into. Yeah. I felt just a little emotional relief. I don't have to exercise every day. Every day. Every day. Every day. Okay. So I'm going to just try a sentence here. And what I'm doing is I'm stepping into her system as impartially as I have access to it at this time, yeah? We haven't done a full constellation. We haven't done a full interview. We don't know her ancestral history. We don't know her personal trauma history. Yeah. All of which is helpful and also can be unhelpful, as we all know, right? And then this is what I have to do. I have to stop and feel it. Ah, this is simple. Something is my fault and I don't know what it is.
Did you want me to do something?
Nope, just
Oh.
hear it. So just feel that, and I'm going to ask you how it feels in a moment, but just let it land for a moment.
Can you repeat it? You said
I'm going to.
fast.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Just. Something is my fault, and I don't know what it is. What happens in your body when I say that, Susan?
Not too much, to be honest, at least as far as I could tell.
So that's information, right? And I'm going to get to this in a moment, in a little bit, right? It's not a matter of I'm wrong or Susan's wrong, right? We'll just put all that aside. Right? What did happen when I said that sentence? This is me needing a little bit more information.
I felt it kind of go into my system. It was looking for like a hook, but it didn't land anywhere. So it felt kind of just like a little bit just neutral, but not bad, either.
Okay, thank you.
The part that maybe resonated more was the second half. I'm not sure what it is. There's something about the knocking piece.
Yeah,
That had a bit more.
That's where I'm playing too. Thank you. It's exactly. There's something like something's going on and I don't know what it is. And something around, and it's my job to find out. There is a responsibility piece. I haven't found it. Something like that. How does that land for you?
It's a bit similar. It's the second part about the kind of not knowing that has more of a something there for me.
Okay, so we'll just stay with I don't know what's going on. It's got a second part, and I don't know what it is.
It could it be something like, I don't know what it's gone and maybe I should, or something like that?
We'll put it in your words. Yeah, and maybe I should. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So notice I worked with the client to nuance the words for something that would land for her. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on, and maybe I should. I like the maybe. So hang out in that space, okay, Susan?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for doing that. I'm going to do one more. Thank you, and by the way, thank you for being the first. I appreciate you doing that very much.
My
Yeah?
pleasure. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Laura, you have your hand up. Again, state it as simply as you can, one or two or three sentences.
I want to have a loving and passionate relationship with my husband, but every time we're together, I feel disappointment and anger.
So I actually get quite an immediate healing sentence, and it's not your words. It's somebody needs to say them to you, and I don't know who it is. My guess is it's someone who precedes your husband. Yeah? Although it includes him too. Like, I don't want to dismiss that. Um, um, but something like, Laura, there really is something wrong. How does that land for you?
A little teary, like maybe it's not just me being crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got a little teary too. And I'll share everyone my process there. Um, I'm going to change your words a little bit, Laura, just to sort of 3D it a little bit. I heard I should feel loving and passionate, but what I really feel is blah blah blah. But that's wrong, or I can't, that's the resisted feelings, or is the anger and the whatever. And so, generally in constellations, right or wrong is not very relevant. We've got to include what's showing up first. Then we can deal with right and wrong about it, right? Yeah. The first thing we got to do is find a way to include whatever this compulsion to the language was, what, disappointment
Anger.
and anger. Yeah, we've got to include that first. Now, I don't know where that needs to be included. It might be in the relationship, in the history of the relationship, or it may be something before either of you were even born, right? That's the space we work in, or both, right? But someone needs to hear. You are maybe entangled with somebody who needed to hear there really is something wrong here. Okay, so I'll let you chew with that a little bit, and then your process will figure out how much of this has to do with your marriage and how much it doesn't have anything to do with the marriage, and some mixture of both, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I decided that I wanted to throw you all into that. And by the way, thank you, Laura and Susan. I love those two examples because they're great examples of one where I got kind of an immediate hit that resonated with the client, and one where it took a bit longer and it was a more complex response in the client. Both of them are part of what happened with healing sentences, right? Yeah. I'm actually really glad for Susan's because um, I don't want to function as kind of the miracle worker here with the healing sentences. Healing sentences are sometimes they pop out of you and you're like, boom, and everything's different. Yay! And you all go home and everything's different. Yay! And often it's a more complex process. Yeah. So I like that we just role modeled both of those. So thank you to both of you about that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift gears. So I wanted to start out with a little practice so you can start feeling that. And I hope on your end, And we have people with all different backgrounds here. From people who are just kind of interested, they may be coaches or therapists, and they're like wanting to integrate this a little bit more in your life, in your work, but you don't really have the whole constellations frame so much. And then when we have people who are extremely skilled facilitators here, and everything in between. Hopefully, in that sort of like just throwing you all into the deep end for a moment, I'm going to be inviting you over and over and over again, to the degree that you know what this means, or you can get a handle on this, to step into the systems of the issues that we're looking at, because that's where you're going to start to um, find these healing sentences. Okay? And again, with Laura, it was very straightforward for me. I could hear her saying she should feel one thing and she should not feel another. When we do that, there's an exclusion, and the movement is to include what's been excluded. Susan's was more complex. And when I can really explain my process, I promise I will. Okay. Yeah. But hopefully you can all sort of hear and see now for, at least for Laura, like she said she should feel this and she shouldn't feel that. And I'm like, first step, we got to include. Yeah. And different people here would have come up with different language for that. I just felt the sentence. I actually tried it on myself. There's something really wrong, genuinely wrong here. There is actually something wrong here, and something in my body released. And I went, let's try it and see if it releases for the client. And then the client said she got teary, and I'm like, okay, that's your tell. Something's shifting, something's moving. Okay. Okay. Okie dokies. So I'm going to move into the lecture now, and I'm going to be doing this for a little bit because I've got a lot I got to say about this. I'm going to be putting some slides up on the screen, and that means I can't see you if you raise your hand or anything. I am basically okay with you interrupting me with questions as long as I'm not in the middle of a massive flow. You can use the little computer hand, or you can just unmute and say, Leslie, I have a quick question about that. That's fine. We're a small enough group. We can do that. Okay. So I am going to hopefully share screen right to what I want to show. Sometimes I do this better than at other times. Okay, so can everyone see that? Primary and secondary emotions at the top.
Leslie, just a quick question. Should we take notes, or will you share this with us so we can just listen?
Take any notes that work for you, but you will be getting these slides.
Okay.
And if you want to take notes anyway, because I'll be saying things that are not necessarily, completely encompassed in the slides. So the first thing we have to do is tackle an adjacent topic. So for a moment, just put healing sentences aside. And for those of you who worked with me before, have been students in my classes, my apologies. I'm a little bit of a broken record on this, but this is critical material for constellations in general and for healing sentences in particular. So primary and secondary emotions is summarized. The nice thing is it's summarized in 2 pages in Love's Hidden Symmetry. For those of you who do not have Love's Hidden Symmetry, go to Hellinger DC and order it up. You need to have it on your library if you want to take this work seriously. It's the one, but there are many, many, many books, but this is the one book you got to have, okay? Hellinger DC is the name of the place to order that. Don't go to Amazon. It costs $100 on Amazon. He has a very particular definition of these words. If you're a psychotherapist or background in psychology, you may have heard of primary and secondary emotions. I want to warn you, Bert Hellinger, the founder of Constellations work, has slightly different definitions. So don't rest on those definitions. Go to Hellinger, very important. Primary emotions are emotions that come, do the job, and go. They give dignity and weight to the person when you have them, and they are attractive. And I put that in quotation marks. I don't want you to misunderstood. It just means when you have them, people tend to come towards you. Yeah? They tend to be drawn to you when you say these kinds of things or express these kinds of emotions. Secondary emotions tend to loop. They generate more of the same. You have more of the emotion, you have more of the emotion, you have more of the emotion. They don't have an ending spot. They lower your dignity and your weight. They are an assertion of helplessness. This is a very interesting observation on his side, that they are in and of themselves an assertion that I'm not helpable, that the situation cannot be fixed, as much as they seem to request help and want change. Yeah? And therefore, they are ultimately unattractive. In the short term, people may come towards you to try and help, but they eventually figure out that they can't do anything, and they eventually go away. Understanding the difference between, and I do whole workshops on primary and secondary emotions. So this is an abysmally short introduction to this topic if it is new for you. But this is a really, really critical distinction to make. We have to work in constellations as from primary emotions mostly. Also therapy, education, wherever we want to learn, we need to be mostly in primary emotions. We do not learn in secondary emotions. Another way to put this, some of you have, there's lots of different language for this stuff out there. This overlaps with the trauma language of dysregulation, for those of you who have that framework. If we're emotionally dysregulated, we cannot learn. Yeah, so the child who's coming from an abused home, who goes to school and tries to learn her fractions, can't learn. She's emotionally dysregulated. Yeah. Both Hellinger and a constellation person by the name of Ursula Franke, Franke, underline this, that a lot of therapy gets bogged down in secondary emotions, in the repetition of the secondary emotions, and it seems helpful, but it isn't. And it doesn't move forward anymore. It's just more, I was abused, I was hurt, I wasn't understood, I was criticized, and it loops and it loops and it loops. This is the language of trauma, yeah? Which is by its nature repetitive, right? The war vet comes home, hears the car backfiring, and instantly he's on the battlefield again. It's a repetition, right? The girl who's beat up by dad finds boyfriends who will beat her up, right? It's the terrible bug in trauma. And the underlying intent is to resolve or complete, but it does just the opposite. In fact, not only does it keep the person where they are, it makes it worse. Now we have to do healing from the abusive boyfriend, right? Yeah. So it actually digs the hole deeper. This is a very difficult thing because the person expressing all this feels they're doing something absolutely critical. There's a lot of loyalty energy for this, but it doesn't do them any good. What I like to call, I borrow from the Zen koan, secondary emotions point to the moon. There's the thing, the bad thing that happened. Primary emotions are the moon. They actually allow you to express the emotional truth so that it can complete and you can move on. Done properly, they are not resisted. They are actually welcomed. They are the grease that moves the system. Oh, finally the thing that needed to be said. Oh, finally the thing that needed to be included. The emotion that's been repressed, whatever it is, yeah? The person who was forgotten about, the event that was made a secret, all those things, yeah? So therefore, part of our job as facilitators or coaches or whatever role you're in is to explore the secondary emotions to find the primary ones, but not to stay stuck in them, to keep sort of rewarding the client for continuing to produce a lot of secondary emotions. The old, I'm just sharing my feelings, you just need to give room for the feelings, mostly is not workable. Mostly doesn't get us where we need to go. There are some limited circumstances where like taking the Bataka bat to the cushions is actually really helpful. It allows for discharge. But mostly that kind of stuff, it just kind of loops, and 6 months down the road or 6 years down the road, the person's dealing with the same issue. It actually didn't change. It actually didn't transform. There are some exceptions to that, but not a lot. And when it does work, it's because the primary emotion was accessed. Primary emotions function to include what is. So in practical terms, when we're in a constellation, okay, working with representatives is really, this is a really tricky bit. Representatives bring so much to the table around access to information, invisible information in the system, which is what you need. You need to include something that hasn't been included, right? But there's also some challenges. Representatives, by the very nature of kind of the experience of being a representative, is you tend to be very loyal to your role and not fully aware that your awareness of the role is limiting your awareness of the system, right? You're in a role, right, as a representative. And my experience with representatives is that mostly what they start out communicating are secondary emotions. Yeah. A lot of that intensity, a lot of that trauma information. So our job as facilitators is to help representatives get underneath. What is the root? What is really going on underneath here? And that's part of both healing sentences do that. They can help representatives do that, and they can be the result of helping representatives to do that. I'm going to be talking more about how to do that and demonstrating some of that. It can be as simple as, the representative is saying things like, everyone's at fault except for me. Right? I mean, we've all been there, right? Like, that's secondary emotions. That's where the system is stuck, right? And you know the history. You've done the interview. You know that that particular person has some responsibility in the system, yeah? Everyone else is to blame. Has nothing to do with me, right? It can be as simple as saying, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. That's rapport. You got to start out with rapport. I'm going to get to that in a moment. What's underneath that? What's underneath everybody else being at fault? And that's the place where a representative might be able to say, I'm actually really scared that if I say the truth, they're all going to kill me. Oh, okay. Good to know. Right? Now we've got a movement. We've gotten underneath. We've gotten to something primary. Yeah. I want to say a word about Bert Hellinger in this regard. If any of you have watched his videos or actually had the good luck of watching him work live, I got to watch it once. He didn't have to deal with any of this. Bert Hellinger did not allow anything to happen in his environment that was secondary. He just would not permit it. Bert Hellinger is a fierce fellow. Yeah, he's got shaman kind of weight. And so he created a culture where if you stepped into representing, you knew you might not have been able to articulate it this way, but you were not hanging out in secondary emotions for a moment. You were going straight for the primary. And so he didn't need to talk much. Didn't need much reporting from representatives. I just want to acknowledge this, that he was able to create a culture that was almost always in primary emotions, because most of us do not have that and cannot create it because we're not Bert Hellinger. So we have to deal with a messier space. And we need to be okay dealing with the messier space. I just really want to name that. So these are some of the movements to help people move into their primary emotions, slowing them down, inviting them into their dignity, asking them what's underneath that, and offering healing sentences. Okay. Fundamentally, healing sentences, again, back to Laura's example, I'm just using it because it was such an easy to explain one. It's an expression of trying to manage a difficult situation, whether it's hers personally or something ancestral, right? I shouldn't feel this, or I want to feel this, I prefer to feel this, and I shouldn't be feeling that, right? That's a managing of some disorder in the system, right? For which we give her and anyone else who preceded her with that pattern 5 stars for trying to manage the situation. And the healing sentence movement is to include what's been excluded. A first movement with respect to some order of love, in this case, including something that's been excluded, yeah. With a little hint of role, because I wasn't sure, I didn't think it was really Laura who needed to say it, and maybe even whether it's Laura who needs to receive it. Ultimately, is it her experience or is it an entanglement? I don't know, but one has questions about that, right? Okay. Rapport and timing. So this now has sort of the caveats. We can't simply maneuver a constellation of primary emotions with our authority. You see that the client is functioning too big in the system. They have to be small. So you tell the client to say, you're big and I'm small, and make them sit on the ground, right? And they turn to you and say, I don't want to do that. That feels bad, right? You can't force them into it. If we try too hard, it can be at the cost of trust and rapport with your representatives, with the client, and with the system as a whole. So, with healing sentences, as with anything, timing is critical. Now, we saw this with Susan. Yeah. I'm going to pop to the bottom sentence, and then I'm going to explain it. This is Leslie quote, by the way. This is not somebody else, but it's something I say so often that I put it in quotes in bold and italics, okay? If there is still resistance, something hasn't been included yet. Always, 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 always. Now, I don't even like the word resistance very much because it's got a blamey quality to it, because it comes from the world of psychotherapy where, unfortunately, the sentence, The therapy failed because the client was resistant, yeah, is part of its history. I don't think it's as commonly spoken now, but it is part of sort of psychotherapy's history. Yeah. Um, if the representative doesn't want to say the healing sentence you know is the right step for the system, if someone's staying in secondary emotions, if you've offered something and someone says no to it, if the client is saying no to it or saying it's not landing for me or whatever it is, at the very least, you've skipped something. You could be entirely on the wrong track as well, right? But at the very least, you've skipped something really important. Something hasn't been included yet. I'll give the classic example of this that we have all seen or heard about. Again, we recognize that the client is functioning too big in the system. They need to receive life from their ancestors and acknowledge that they're small and there are things they can't fix. Yeah. And they're not willing to do it. They're just not, they're not gonna do it. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be small in the system. Well, quite possibly what needs to be included first is acknowledgement of abuse or violence or perpetration, right? You know, we've all seen this, right? But it can be, this can be very, very subtle business. The nice thing is you have a rule of thumb. If you're offering something that makes sense to you as the facilitator to the system, and anyone is saying no to it in any way that no is showing up, yeah, I don't know, I'm not feeling it, or confusion, or distraction, or a hell no, or whatever's showing up, something hasn't been included yet. This is why I said with Susan, it's not about someone being wrong. I wanted to step back. What has not been, what needs to come first? What needs to be included? What needs to be acknowledged first? And then I worked with Susan a little bit to find something that needed to happen first. Yeah. This is just unbelievably critical. I want to offer up an example that's not about a healing sentence, but it's about the same movement in constellation work. And it's about really listening, and the way I put it is noticing what you're noticing, but you're not noticing that you're noticing it. I'll explain that. Because we're all noticing all kinds of things kind of subterraneously. It's not unconscious exactly, but there's stuff we're noticing, but because we're busy and multitasking, we're not noticing it. Okay? We need to bring those up to the surface. So I was working in an in-person constellation, many moons ago. Remember in-person constellations, in a room, and the client's mother had been abusive. She'd done a lot of bad things, violations. I was working with the representative for the mother, and we were doing everything we could to support this woman, to acknowledge her past and the things that had happened to her, get her support, give her a place to, acknowledge her humanity. And she wasn't having any of it. She was saying no to all of it and showing up still in kind of a perpetratory way in the system. And I was getting tired and frustrated, and the room was getting tired and frustrated. This person who historically we knew was a perpetrator was just not letting go of their innocence. Yeah. And we were stuck. Okay. And I was doing all the right things. Yeah. Getting her support, acknowledging how she had been hurt, all that stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't working. It wasn't working. It wasn't working. And then I finally sort of noticed what was going on, noticed what I was noticing. And then I noticed something else, and I sat down and I turned to the whole group, just to the whole circle. And I said, if anyone in this room needs this woman to be any different than the way she is, I ask you to let it go right now. Just put it down. And you could feel everyone go, oh, okay. The system shifted, that pressure, that need for her to be different, which understandably the client was carrying. Yeah? She needed her mom to be different. And we were all on her side and we were all carrying that. Yeah? We all let it go. And within about 30 seconds, the mother turned to us with tears in her eyes. I think I may be slightly responsible for this situation. Right? Once we stop pushing. Yeah. And the system had gotten enough in the, sort of identifying with the client's need for mom to be different that we were all in on it, right? We had all sort of unconsciously joined in. So that's not about healing sentences per se, but this is the movement. This is the movement. Noticing what's stuck, what hasn't been included. Honoring the resistance as information. Get curious about your crankiness, about your fatigue, about the group's lack of cooperation, about whatever's going on. Yeah. Okay. So timing is really critical. You may have the best healing sentences in the world, but if the system is saying no to it, then you're going to have to shift gears. Yeah? You're going to either have to retool the sentence or let it go for another time, which may be a different constellation, by the way. Sometimes a constellation, you can see the bigger move that needs to happen in the system, but in the next hour, you're not going to get there. There's a different move that needs to come first, and that's all the group has energy for. And the other movement is going to have to happen another time. Yeah, that happens too, right? So moving into a little bit more nuts and boltsy pieces of this. Oh, that's not right. My cut and paste did not work. Ah, that's completely wrong. Give me just a second here. How did that happen? That's frustrating. I'm not going to be able to fix that right now in front of me. What my cut and paste was supposed to be about was, and now I've ruined the whole screen. I'm going to have to leave share for a moment, stop share. That's not it either. That's stop share. I just ruined my whole screen. Let me see if I can find it with ease. Patience with me. See if I can find it easily. Of course, with Zoom going, everything's a little slower. Here we go. Slow, slow, slow. Okay. Coming back now. Okay. So here are some stock healing sentence examples. Okay. If you have participated in constellations, you have heard some of these. Stock healing sentences don't work if you just pull them out and slap them on, okay? This is often something that new facilitators do. They can see, this goes back to my last example, that the client's being too big in the system, and they ask the representative for the client to say, you are big and I am small. Thank you for my life. And it doesn't work. It doesn't feel right. Again, that's just a timing issue. Okay, it's not the right time for that. What I do want to say about stock healing sentences is that they are awesome. They're really awesome. They go straight to this informational center of the universe, wherever that place is, and they pull forward these deep archetypes that, when they're timed right, are ridiculously powerful. And we've all been there. Yeah, we've all been there or been on the receiving end when we were given a "I see you, it's good to be seen" kind of a sentence, and tears came to our eyes. Yeah. I tell you an example I had with Bert Hellinger. It wasn't even in the constellation, but it was a healing sentence. The client was sitting next to him. They weren't saying anything, as was Bert Hellinger's tendency in his later years. And he just turned to the client and he said, "It's over." And the room shook and went wah, wah, wah. Tears came to my eyes, and the client smiled and walked off the stage. That was, it just came straight from the center of something and went straight to the center of something. Yeah. That's a stock phrase. It's over. It happened. Yeah. It's one of those stock sentences. Timed properly, these are incredibly powerful. And you may be thinking, what am I going to do? Flashcards? How am I going to memorize all these? No. Don't try and do that. The ones that I use that are kind of in my muscle memory are ones that I've heard in constellations, and I've had a moment, like I was listening to a facilitator, a workshop, reading in a book, some of them have come out of reading Bert Hellinger, and a lot of early Bert Hellingers, especially case studies, so you're actually reading the constellation, right? And it landed in some way, and I went, I'm keeping that one. And if I go to a weekend workshop, I try to like grab one. I remember the one I had from a Stefan Hausner constellation. It was about parents who fought a lot and suffered a lot in their relationship, which was true of me. You know? And so the sentence was, "Dear parents, I see your suffering and what it cost you for me to be here. I leave that with you. Thank you for my life." Boom. I've used it a lot since then. Yeah, because a lot of people have estranged parents, right, who hurt each other in their presence. Yeah. Unless some of you are flashcard type people, you can try and memorize a bunch of stock healing sentences, but you don't have to. Let them accrue. Go to constellations. Participate in a lot of constellations. Go to constellations facilitated by other people. Keep your ear out. Let some of them sink in. And over the years, you'll just have them handy. And then you'll be in the situation, and by George, that'll be the sentence you need. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of stock healing sentences. Some people are not. I think it's because of the problem of pulling them out and slapping them on when the timing isn't right. Yeah. Obviously, all the other considerations are still necessary. Okay. Okay, so now I want to go back to ignore that. I need to go back to the other. That's not it. Never mind that. Share screen. I need to re-up my original. Okay. The other kind of constellation is the other kind of healing sentence is a custom, right? So it's one that's never been heard before. right? Maybe. That is just showing up in the moment, and that was true mostly for both of the examples that I gave you, although something along the lines of there's something actually wrong here, or you're not wrong about this, or something like that. That's a kind of a common kind of a sentence that communicates to the client like you weren't crazy, um, or to somebody in the system, you weren't crazy. It actually happened, something like that. Yeah. But most of you are here really for this. This is what you're here for, is the custom healing sentences. How do you come up with them? There are two kinds of them, two subsets. And the reason why I'm pulling these apart is that the first kind is easier and it's worth practicing to kind of build your bones for the second kind. Build your muscles, not bones, muscles. The first kind, it takes perhaps a complex representative report. I'm feeling this and this and this and this and this, and boils it into something simple. It's a very simple turn a secondary expression into a primary one. Yeah? These are rarely resisted because it's already being named and it wants to come out in a better form. Yeah, they just don't know how to get there. Okay? When they're spoken, it gives the role weight and dignity. It helps overall system flow. These are usually toward the beginning of a constellation, and these are just easier for the facilitator. Yeah. Sometimes it's actually something that the representative said word for word, but they kind of ran over it. Like they said a bunch of things, and there was one phrase that you went, ooh, ooh, the system needs to hear that, right? Yeah. So they come in, you say, how you doing? And they say, well, I really can't find my place. I'm feeling very confused. I feel a little cold. And that one irritates me. And you say, oh, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Could you please just say, I can't find my place? Yeah. So it can literally be the words. Be on the listen. Yeah. As you get more sophisticated, you'll start, there's some sort of interesting tells. Something like someone says, I can't see anyone else here upon first report. Like, how you doing? Do you notice anyone else here? Nah, I don't really notice them. And you say, could you try the sentence, I don't want to notice them? And usually kind of goes, they're like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got me. Right? Now, the other kind is actually a movement. It's more of a movement because it's including what hasn't been included. And it leads to movement in the system. The example again with Laura. These can be resisted, especially if it's not timed right. They're not ready to make this movement. It needs nuance and it needs rapport, my friends. It needs rapport. You can't force these. And rapport just means you're on the system, and the individuals involved feel like you're on their side. You're not making them do something, yeah? Remember my example about working with the mother. She was resisting because none of us were in rapport with her. Right? We were kind of trying to force her into something. We got into rapport, and then her resistance relaxed because she could feel. Yeah. These are mini resolutions, usually later in the constellation, and these can be a little trickier. Okay. Now, you're like, how to do it, how to do it. And again, I've been saying, as I've been going along, I've been saying how to do it, and I'm saying it in lots of different kinds of ways, okay? And I'm trying to build an argument here. It requires a deep muscle memory understanding of the orders of love. Can't underline this enough. This is not a workshop on the orders of love. I'm not even going to really review them here. They have to do with the rules around belonging, around seniority, around balance of giving and taking, acknowledging wrongdoing without revenge. Yeah, these things. Um, when you start to sense, as I did again with Laura, that something had been excluded, this is a violation of the orders of love, right? And then I'm like, okay, what do I do about that? Yeah. Again, timed properly, the system inevitably welcomes these movements. Yeah. And if you are correct about the order that's out of order, but there's another order that comes first, again, you're going to have to let that one go for a bit and deal with the one that's more immediate. And the constellation, there's no hierarchy of orders, not really in an absolute sense. The system has some hierarchies, what needs to come first, what needs to come second. Severe violations often need to come first. Yeah. Or spectacular trauma. Everyone died in the Holocaust. You know, that kind of thing. Very frequently, you'll be interviewing a client and they'll be talking about how they need help. They've been procrastinating at work. They've been getting bad job reviews. They need help with that, and that's really important. And as part of your interview, you discover, say, that their father suicided when they were 8. And you probably are going to have to apologize to them and say, I'm really sorry, but we got to deal with that first. And then we'll get to the procrastination at work thing, and it might even help with the procrastination at work thing. I don't know. But we're going to have to, this is first. This is really important. And they'll start to cry and they'll go, yeah, I know, okay. Yeah. Some practical matters.
Leslie, do you
Yeah.
have another example of orders that may be layered like that,
Sure.
or the need to deal with orders?
Well, again, the sort of the big one that comes up over and over again is the client is being too big in the system. So that's a disorder around seniority. Yeah, they've taken on the problems of the family system that's making themselves too big in the system. You know that they need to be small in the system. Yeah, but the fact that they were beat up by their dad needs to come first. So that's including a what is. It's an honoring what is, right? And acknowledging wrongdoing. I'll give a really concrete example. When you start, I use this as an example just because in our Western world it comes up so much. People who have family systems involved with the Holocaust, but this also works for other genocides and Holocausts, slavery, Cherokee Walk of Tears, colonization. But this has come up for me a lot. In the client system, do we need to deal with the victim-perpetrator dynamic? Or do we need to deal with the fact that there's been a grief so big that the family hasn't been able to process it yet? I've had constellations that involve the Holocaust where we really need to bring in the Nazis and the Jews and deal with the victim-perpetrator dynamic, and that brings relief. And other ones, I've tried to bring that in, and it's a distraction. I actually just need to put all the dead people on the floor and let the parents grieve. Yeah. And this system will like welcome or invite. You'll feel, well, you'll see in the next bit some practical matters around that. And there isn't a rule, like someone has the Holocaust. Now you have to deal with Nazis and Holocaust victims, right? Right? Sometimes not. Is that helpful? Does that answer the question? Or is that a good example for the person who just asked the question?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. It was very helpful. Thanks.
Excellent. And you have to follow the system. There really is no objective hierarchy. Other than at the top is usually honoring what is, but that's a big category. That's kind of everything. Okay, so practical matters. You don't need to be perfect. That's why I really liked the one with Susan. As long as you stay in rapport and you don't make anyone wrong about not getting it completely right, you stay curious and interested. Representatives can often fix a healing sentence that is 80% of the way there. I had a beautiful one once where I fed to the client to say, it broke my heart when you left me, which I thought was excellent. And the representative said, that's close, but can I fix it? And I said, sure. And she said, she turned to the person, right? She said, it broke my heart when I left you. Yeah. The representative often can't find the healing sentence like fresh for themselves, but if you get them 80% of the way there, they can find the final 20% very often. And Susan and I were playing in that space a little bit. I had part of it, but not all of it. And she could feel the part that resonated and the part that didn't. Yeah. So trust your representative's report on how it lands for them. Even if you know that's a movement that needs to happen. And sometimes you do know it's a movement that needs to happen, but again, the timing may be the issue. Yeah. Use your basic mammal level capacity to read the emotional state of the system. I know we call this intuition. That's fine. I'm actually not big on the word intuition. We all come with a limbic system. You can go into a meeting, a work meeting, that you don't know anything that happened, but you can feel the tension. Or you can feel that everyone's relaxed and having a good time. We share this with meerkats and wolves, this part of the brain. It's basic biology. We can feel the emotional quality of a system. We do it all the time. This is one of the things we don't notice we're noticing. We're often reacting to the emotional tension of a system without noticing that that's what we're reacting to. We're just reacting, yeah? So, as a facilitator, more and more and more, you're going to notice what you're noticing. And subsets here, to feel how taut or fraught a system is, like I'm offering really nice sentences, but it still feels, yeah, what's going on? Yeah. And to tell if a healing system is working or not, that is feeling the system relax or shift. Like, whew, something just feels better now. Yeah. Again, we've all got this capacity, and a lot of this is running unconsciously because that's useful, right? To have things, to not necessarily, to be able to react quickly to the presence of a hawk without having to think, oh, there is a hawk. If you do that, you're hawk lunch, right? You're just reacting to it. Constellations need to bring that capacity up to consciousness so you can work with it, yeah? Be transparent, it puts the system at ease. Everything I did with Susan and with Laura, I will generally do with a group. I will let them know my process. Oh, I got that one wrong. That's again, the example of the mother, the representative representing the mother. I shared with the group. Anyone who's needing mom to be different right now, please let it go. Whew. Okay. Yeah. And try not to be too rigid, too pushy or fussy. Save that for the rare occasion you really need to use your authority. Again, most of us do not profit from trying to imitate Bert Hellinger in this regard. Bert Hellinger was a person of enormous weight and authority. He's like the village shaman you go to who you expect to scare you a little bit, right? Who's kind of fierce and kind of scary and is not necessarily very nice. We actually don't, most of us here don't have that capacity. Every once in a while, you're going to need to do like, I'm not kidding. I need you to do X right now. And you bring that forward. You only got a certain amount of that in a system. So use it where it's really needed. Yeah. And you're really clear that fierceness is going to be needed. Yeah. Okay. The other thing I just want to say, as from my examples, healing sentences are not everything. Yeah. Um, uh, uh, Rearrangements. I mean, sometimes if the client is standing up and the parent is sitting down on the ground, you just ask them to switch, and something relaxes. Yeah, it functions in the same way. Sometimes it doesn't. The timing was off, right? But sometimes that can be the movement. Or two people who are not looking at each other. They don't want to look at each other, and you say, "I'm really sorry, but could the two of you just give it a try? Look at each other." And then they look at each other and they go, "Oh, it's not as bad as I thought." And something settles. Yeah. Sometimes it's exactly as bad as they thought it would be. And then you have to backtrack a little bit. But healing sentences aren't everything. There are lots of different ways to move the system from secondary into primary emotions. Yeah, which again is the ongoing movement here. I think we've lost some people. Seems to be fewer people on the screen than we had before. Okay. So that is all that I am going to say. Some questions, comments, and then I want to do a little constellation demo, and then I'm going to send you into groups.
I have a question. I stuck my hand up. This is
Please.
Laura. Um, you may have done this, but could you give an example of primary versus secondary emotions? Like, is there like a
Yes.
list or
Yes.
another example?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm to blame. I did everything wrong. I should be punished forever. I'm a horrible person. Example A. Example B. I did that. What I did cannot be undone. I take responsibility. Yeah. There are no emotions that are purely primary or secondary. Every emotion, guilt, shame, sadness, anger, um, can be expressed secondary or primary. Or all emotions are useful at the right time in the right way in a primary expression. Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes if you hear anger going on, right? Rage and you say, can you just say, there's something wrong here that I can't fix, and I really want to fix it. Maybe. Yeah. Because that's the primary. Anger is the recognition that something's wrong and it needs to be different, right? That's what anger serves. Yeah. So it's not about getting rid of anything. It's not about removing, even though when representatives start getting really dismissive and blamey, I can be like, stop that, please stop that. It's like fingernails on blackboard for me. Even underneath that, there's something useful trying to be seen and heard. What is important about that blame? What is important about that dismissiveness? And it takes a lot of discipline on the part of the facilitator to remain curious and interested and as non-reactive as possible to whatever's showing up. Yeah. What is this in service to? What's the moon this is pointing to? Yeah. Okay. So it is 26 after by my camera. I am going to call for a very brief break because I need one. So quick bio break, and we'll come back and I'm going to do a short constellation for someone. 5 minutes. Please come back at 31 after. Okay? If you're within reach of my voice, you might be considering whether you might like a very brief, probably incomplete constellation. Um, if you have a really simple system, you and your brother are fighting, you in your closets. I need a really simple system because I want to mostly demo, not spend too much time trying to understand an intricate system. So just consider that. Rufus, you're not going to starve. Go away. He's certain he's going to pass out before the workshop is over. Okay, if you're within sound of my voice, come on back. Um, so before I do a constellation, I feel a need to just feel the group a little bit more. How this is landing, any questions? Are you thinking of constellations you've attended in the past where this movement did or didn't happen? I just want a few questions or responses just so I can feel the group a little more. And of course, if you have a question, Veronica, I don't know if you have a question or you were volunteering. Um,
Both. I'm volunteering, and now since you're offering questions, I also have a question.
Excellent question.
Well, actually, it's not a question; it's a comment. I like it. You just connected something for me really brilliantly. So, like I just wrote down the key to creating the healing sentences is based on the orders of love. That was a connection that wasn't in my brain before, and now that makes sense to me now.
Awesome.
That, and then along with like, oh, it's almost like in mediation we use the tool flip it, so it's kind of similar in this sense where like the client is actually telling you what they need, but they're telling it to you in the secondary emotion.
Yes.
So it's really when we flip it, that's really what we kind of are stating. So you really need this. That's really what I'm walking
Excellent.
away with. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and that flipping, it also shows up in something called paradoxical therapy, in reframing and NLP, some of the more challenging places where you kind of confront clients. The trick, I'm sure, with flipping in mediation, as in healing sentences, is staying in rapport, right? That's the tricky bit, right? Um, so one of the things that I will often do, if I feel like I've got pretty good rapport with the system, is something like, someone's blaming, just as a for instance, and I'll say, so could you please say, everyone else is at fault, and they're happy to do that. So they'll say, everybody else is at fault, which means maybe I'm a little at fault too. And yeah, maybe I'm a little at fault too. It's like you got your foot in the door in a funny kind of a way. But you have to be very careful about this, because if you just drive to, you have to say you're at fault too, because we all know you are, right? You're just going to get a brick wall, right? Understandably, even if it's our fault, we're scared of the consequences of naming that, right? Understandably. Especially if systemically the violation is really big. So rapport. Mei Ling, you have your hand up. Question or share or something. Go ahead and unmute.
I have a question. When you say you feel into the system, like what do you do? Because usually right now, I just have the representative say the healing statement, and then I observe their response. Like, is there other thing like a system as an entity that you're tuning in and feeling it?
Yeah, thank you. It is the facilitator version of representational perception. You're doing what representatives do, but you're stepping into the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I understand it. And sometimes it's easier to track than at other times. Like I can't explain with Susan exactly why I got that. I mean, this comes more under the heading of intuition, and it could be off track, by the way, of relief at stopping exercising. I just had that arise in me, and I found that interesting and possibly relevant, right? That's what happened when I stepped into the system. It can be like that. Like, I don't know why I'm having that, but that's showing up. I might see where that goes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or it can be more like Laura's, or cognitively, I knew exactly what was going on, right? So I stepped into her system, and I could see that she was excluding one feeling and trying to make herself feel another feeling, right? Yeah. So that's what I mean by stepping into. I don't like the language of stepping into, except that we don't have a better verb, really. It's using all of that limbic level capacity for sensing a system at an emotional level.
So do you expand yourself to tune more?
Okay, so at a physiological level, I would say I shut up, I slow down, I get quiet, I can often close my eyes, I breathe, And yes, I would say there's a metaphor of stepping into the person's system. I'm going to go into this.
Mm, okay.
Your language, Mei Ling, I know you have it shifting.
Mm, mm, mm,
Okay, from some shared training that is not constellations. Yeah, it's
Mm.
shifting.
okay.
Okay,
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. But I want to say at a physiological level,
Mm,
for those of you who have not gotten Steven Hausner's book, even if it costs me my life, it's a good book on its own merits. But one of the things I love about it, it's got a wonderful stage interview at Esalen between Stefan Hausner and Judith Hemming. It's a really, it's worth it for just that transcript at the back of the book, where they explain what they're feeling as facilitators. And what they discover, they're good friends. They love each other. They love each other's work, that they're experiencing something really different. So this is how, when you step into a system, what are you experiencing? I bet you dollars to donuts it's not the same as what I experience. Yeah. Some people experience it more verbally, some as emotions, some as what they might call energy, some as an expansion, some relate it to their prior training around psychic phenomena and channeling. There's lots of different ways. However you're gaining access, mwah. All I can do is say how I do it, but I'm always a little nervous about explaining that because it's, your body may code it differently. So I recommend that book just so you can get how Stefan feels it and how Judith feels it. And they're both masters. And it's rarely talked about. Like, what does it actually feel like? We should get 10 master facilitators in a room to have them do that, just so we can have some examples. What does it actually feel like in terms of, sensations and self-talk and all that sort of stuff, yeah? Okay, we have some new messages going on here. Hellinger DC, that's where the book is. Thank you, Ali. Even more information. And it looks like there's a Spanish version, perhaps. But yeah, Hellinger DC is the place. Go and get all your constellation books at Hellinger DC, just generally. They're a good small constellation bookstore that have most of the constellation needs you're going to need. It's good to support them, and they tend to be cheaper than Amazon anyway, or have books that Amazon doesn't even have because they're out of print or whatever. They're good people. Susan Ulfelder, one of Bert Hellinger's oldest colleagues here in the United States. Other questions or comments or things you're noticing, resonating with? Yeah, Newton.
Hi, Leslie. I would to know about is there any category called tertiary feelings, like a primary, secondary? Somewhere I heard like a systemic feeling.
I don't think I can say any more than what I've already said, which is that when you're in the presence of emotions that seem to loop and repeat and don't have a way out and assert helplessness and frustrate you, even inside yourself, by the way, right? Then you're in the presence of secondary emotions. Primary emotions come in, they do their job, they can be the same feeling, but they actually are effective. They do something and they increase your dignity. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the resonance in the system. And people like being around primary emotions, even about the worst stuff. Like, people can hang out before the biggest guilt, the biggest rage, the biggest heartbreak, if it's in primary emotions. People mostly want to be around them. Yeah, yeah. And again, read those 2 pages of Love's Hidden Symmetry. Again, Bert Hellinger gets pretty fierce about this. He gets a little not nice about it, but it does. It elucidates the phenomena a little bit more. Ali, good to see you. What's up? You can unmute yourself.
Susan put up her hand first.
Oh,
Do you want to go ahead, Susan, or should I?
Mine's quick.
Mine's
Okay.
pretty, yeah.
Is shame a primary or secondary?
it's both. It can be either. You know, we can do shame spiraling. Oh, everything's my fault. It's terrible. I'm garbage. I shouldn't exist. I had a really good example of this in the intensive last week when I was 12 years old, and I sat next to a black person on a train, and I knew that racism was wrong. I'd been taught correctly, but I didn't want to sit next to the person, and I felt shame. I felt shame for feeling that. That's a primary shame. That's a useful shame. That's a shame that when I had it, I said, I need something to be different in me. I've been shaped in ways I didn't even know I'd been shaped. Right? So shame can be either. Guilt can be either. Joy can be either. You can even have a secondary joy. Not that positive emotions tend to matter too much in this regard.
So
Okay.
how can you know the difference? Because I would say, like, I think in my family system, there's a lot of shame.
Yeah,
And so I don't know if that's, but it's kind of recurring, or like it shows
exactly.
up. for me.
Yeah, you
So
know the
does that mean
difference.
it's secondary then?
Yeah,
If it's recurring?
it's repeating. It's not letting go.
Okay.
Whatever the guilt is has not been named and included and given a place and honored and seen and memorialized.
Mhm.
I don't know what it is, but that would be the question.
So with the shame, you're looking for the guilt?
I don't make big distinctions in this regard. The original shame, whatever it is.
Okay, but are you saying shame and guilt are the same thing? Sorry, I'm a little confused by your language.
I know that some systems make big distinctions between shame and guilt. I'm not right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll stay with your language. Shame, it's looping in the system. Yeah, it has to be secondary, given my answer to Newton's question. And so the originating shame has not been acknowledged or seen or given a place or memorialized or named, which could be a real violation, or it could be something that was called a violation and was not a violation, right? We don't know until we start doing the work. Yeah. It could be the hidden shame of the closeted homosexual, right? Which is no one did anything wrong, but it's gotten caught in the system. Yeah? Or it could be the shame of a perpetrator who is never brought to justice. Yeah? We don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah. It can be internalized oppression in the system, the systemic version of internalized oppression. That's a really interesting one to work with. Yeah. So lots of different versions of it, but whatever is original has not been, for whatever really good reason, and it's knocking at your door apparently. So even naming it today, it's a little shift. Yeah? And we stand with you in naming it and having it have a little primary expression. Like, it's even primary to say we don't know what it is, but we know you're there. The thing that has not been included, we include it. But we don't know what it is yet, so we're not finished. And so everyone here can do that with you. Yeah. We give it a place. Oh, I'm breathing a little easier. Yeah. Ali.
Yeah, well, I heard a question in what Newton asked, and this might be a hallucination, but it really inspired an interesting thought or question. I thought Newton was asking about, are there primary and secondary emotions of the whole system that we are tapping into as facilitators, so that a system tends to get stuck in either a primary or a secondary. For example, I mean, one of the classic cliche ones is Jewish guilt, for example,
Right.
or,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. So I hadn't really thought about that before. So thanks, Newton. I don't know if that's what you were asking, but that's what I heard, which is when you're feeling into a system, what is the primary and or secondary emotion of the whole system? And I hadn't really put those two together before. So I'm just curious what you had to say about it, because of course, you know, our families do tend to get stuck in a particular groove, don't they? So, but I hadn't thought of it again in terms of a particular emotional bent, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to Susan's comment, right? About the guilt the system seems to be holding, the shame, excuse me, she used the word shame, sorry. The shame that the whole system seems to be holding. And so this is bread and butter, right? If one person, just as an example, now this is just bread and butter constellations work, was guilty of something and that never got dealt with, yeah, it's incomplete. Now it generalizes to the whole system. The whole system carries it. And then the client comes to me with guilt. Yeah. So it seems to be about that, the originating person's original guilt and the client's experience of guilt, but it's actually a systemic reality. And that's why the client is suffering from it at all. Yeah. The guilty person could, how often does a client say to you, well, I never even met Uncle Joe, right? He died before I was born. And you're like, not relevant. Sorry, not relevant, right? Because it's being held in the system now. It's incomplete in the system. And
I just, oh, go ahead.
and
Sorry.
the client is carrying it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's a foundational constellation principle. I guess I again, I hadn't I hadn't put it specifically as a whole system carrying a second, you know, having the theme or the flavor of a I hadn't put it in terms of primary and secondary emotions before. So
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
This is the last question because I want us to move back into some doing. But Sophia, I see your hand up. Thank you, Ali. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I was thinking about the feelings and how one's attractive and one isn't,
Right.
you know, energetically. And it seems like the primary ones are authentic, and then it would seem like the secondary are where it becomes like I'm a victim, I'm powerless to about this, and so I'm just
Mhm.
acting it out, something like that. And so I was just thinking, even with the shame and different things like that, is where is the authenticity of it? And then that energetically feels good
Right.
once you speak the truth, it would seem.
Yeah. This, thank you for raising this because this is a slightly tricky bit about this, and it gets back to rapport. Ursula Franke is really, and Bert Hellinger does the same thing. She has an article. If I have a moment, I'll paste it in here. But you can look on Jane Peterson's Human Systems Institute website. In her resources page, she has a section from Ursula Franke's book, In the Mind's Eye. You're going to get this recording so you can find this again, which is the chapter on secondary and primary emotions and their connection to the interrupted reach, which I'm not getting into. It's an awesome, awesome chapter. But she's a psychotherapist by training, Ursula Franke, and she still is. That's what she mostly does. And she's very honest. She says, psychotherapists really start to dislike their clients who cycle in secondary emotions. And it is useful if we can avoid this, right? And that's where we have to be careful about the language of authentic and inauthentic. It's got a little bit of value charge in it, yeah? And the unattractive piece is where, like, for me, it shows up as frustration or impatience, yeah? And that's why even being curious about my impatience, it's not curious about what they're doing, but not like excluding my own impatience, Like, can I stay in curiosity and appreciation so that I can be curious about their secondary emotion and move underneath it? Um, Again, the place where we can be most appreciative of the secondary emotion is it is a compensation for trauma. That's the place where we can get really compassionate about it, right? Like, you have a trauma, you weren't accompanied, seen, witnessed, memorialized, helped through this overwhelming experience, or the system wasn't, if it was a systemic trauma, a collective trauma of some sort. Um, uh, and the residue of that are these cycling emotional states that feel like they will be useful, but they are not. And that's the place where we can be appreciative. So I name that because it shows up as facilitators. We get cranky or frustrated or impatient or try and, there's a lot of the get out of story, stop, that sort of thing. And if we can be curious with ourselves and our reaction is also part of the system. Like, it's a tell. It's useful. It's like, we got something going on here. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that up. Victoria had her hand up possibly for a short little constellation.
Veronica?
Veronica, thank you. Did I said the wrong name? Yes.
Victoria, that's my daughter. Yeah.
Oh, I also saw Victoria yesterday, so sorry about that. Anyone else who has a really simple system who might be interested in having a super short constellation? Okay, Allie's maybe got one. No, she's changing her mind. Okay, Veronica.
Yeah.
We've worked together enough that I think you can sort of do something really
Yeah.
for the purposes of the demonstration.
Right.
And we just lost somebody.
Yeah. Let's see. So I, for some reason, it's really easy for me to hold resentment, and so that's a pattern that I have and I want to get rid of. And I can give you like also just a specific.
Yeah, your most recent experience, very brief,
Yeah.
knocked you off your horse.
Okay. So a teacher of mine, I heard through, you want the story?
No.
No. Okay.
Anything
So
that what we can do is just kind of short, like I heard something and I felt resentful.
right. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly it. I heard something that she said about me, and I have since then disposed of her. And yeah,
And what would you prefer?
I don't want to. I don't want to dispose of her.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to tell everyone here, I really want to do an hour-long constellation on this, and I'm not, just right up front. And for those of your facilitators, I'm being strategic here. Do I set up her and the teacher, which looks at the example, or do I set up her in resentment, which is how she started out by talking about it? And I'm just being strategic about that. And for the purposes of the demo, it doesn't matter too much. So, Veronica, and also for the purposes of this constellation, I need to ask if you offer to be a representative, I'm going to ask you to really try to get to your primary information, right? Not my right hand is cold and I'm looking at the pretty flowers and I'm remembering a time when I was with my boyfriend and all this sort of stuff. Just like try and go to the lower level, okay, if you can, okay? It'll just make this a little bit more efficient if you're able to do that. Veronica, could you please choose someone to be you and someone to be your resentment? And I'm going to invite her to ask anyone here who has their video showing. And if you prefer not to represent, just let Veronica know she will not take it personally.
All right. Yeah. Laura, would you be resentment? And Susan, would you be me? Thank you.
And I'm not going to do a lot of the technical things I normally do around renaming and all that stuff. I really want to make this a little simple. I am going to spotlight them, however, just so we can see. So Laura is Veronica's resentment. Susan is Veronica.
Would you like us to stand or should we just sit?
If you would like to, feel free. Again, I'm not futzing too much, but if whatever supports you're representing and what feels like something you would like to do. Thank you for asking. And what I'm doing here is not a fulsome constellation. I'm looking for opportunities to demonstrate some healing sentences. Okay, so that's what I am up to. Yeah,
I
Susan.
think the primary feeling here is grief. This really deep grief is what this is feeling.
Yeah, and how?
Like a heartbreak kind
Yeah.
of grief.
And is that connected to the turning away, or is that a different movement?
Doesn't really want to turn away.
Oh, okay. So can you say, I don't want to turn away, but I have to?
I don't want to turn away, but I have to.
Does that feel true?
Feels more like I don't want to turn away, but I don't know what else to do.
Okay, good. Now that's an example. I got 80% of the way there. Okay. And I could feel it in my body immediately that she completed it. Yeah. Thank you. Resentment. What are you noticing?
I feel hurt and lonely, and like no one cares about me.
Is it hurt by Veronica's turning away or by something else? Which she's not doing now anymore, by the way, and I'll check in with that. But what's feeling hurtful?
I think that the attention isn't on me. And it's like all my attention is on her. Even my attention is on her. Even my attention isn't on me.
Okay, so Veronica, here is just something for you to chew on. Your resentment is an honoring or including of somebody who needs to be included. That feeling is something you're doing to include somebody. And you may know who that is. I'll leave that with you. Or you may not know who that is.
Do you want me to speak or
not? I was saying that to the client, Veronica, just for her to take in her heart. Yeah. Yeah. Veronica, representative, what are you noticing?
It feels like, I don't know, it feels like resentment. It feels like it's a mom there's some mom stuff there. I don't know if that is mom or something. And it feels like when the representative was saying like, no one's looking here, et cetera, the feeling of was here, but like, you're the big one and I'm the little one. And there was, that was the feeling over here, like, but you're supposed to be something like it,
Yeah.
this one feels small and that one is supposed to be big, but somehow it's not quite right.
So try this sentence. And again, I'm trying to find a way to include what the representative just said and tending to the orders in a way in which is win-win-win. Like it's not finding, I'm not on the hunt for who to blame, ever. Even when there's blame, like that's not my job, okay? So this is the sentence that's coming through, and you'll probably have to fix it a little bit, Veronica's representative. You deserve to have attention, and it's not my job. And we'll let her have that process. I just want to say it's not making the one who may be mother wrong for needing attention, right? And we're also including what the other representative said about her needs, yeah? I'm often looking for the win-win sentence, yeah? Which the system likes when it's timed right. Yeah? So Veronica's rep, can you say that or something like that?
Yeah, do you mind, can you say it one more time? It
yeah.
went in a particular place,
You-
it didn't.
You deserve attention, but it's not my job.
You deserve attention, but it's not my job. It actually feels better. Could I say, and it's not my job?
Sure, yeah.
You deserve attention and it's not my job. I think that just this one needed to know it was not their job.
Right,
That's those the tears came.
yeah. Yeah, as the facilitator, sometimes you step into another consciousness and play a role temporarily. I often found myself doing this when I would touch representatives. Haven't been able to do that in a long time. But I'm going to say to the one who may be mother, Veronica's mother, with all my authority, I want you to know you deserve attention. You are not wrong to need attention.
It doesn't weaken anything here either.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually what
it
feels good
probably
about
helps you to have someone else do that, to acknowledge it. 'Cause it's actually someone else's job, but we're not going to bring that in as a representation, just to keep things simple. And then I'm going to say, this is your daughter. Now we can feel something shifted. Sometimes you are the one saying the healing sentence, you know, as the facilitator. How is that for you, the one originally called resentment?
It feels really true.
Which part?
Both that I need attention and that it's not her job to give it to me.
Okay. So can you say that to her?
I need attention. It's not your job to give it to me.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of guilty that I've been expecting it from her.
Can you say, so this is when we need to move, that's guilt. It's very helpful to hear it, but it's a little secondary. So I'm just going to name it. I asked it of you. Can you say that? I asked it of you.
I asked it of you.
And I'm not anymore.
And I'm not anymore.
Is that okay to say? Yeah.
I noticed I had a little bit of I asked it of you because it felt more like a requirement over here. The experience of it was more like it was required. Just like this one didn't have a choice.
Yeah. So
That's what I didn't ask.
I want to share with the group. This is a funny place as a facilitator. There's something that the system is asking in terms of greater responsibility, right? Which is important. And I don't want to automatically comply with a need for something that could move into more blaming, right? So you've got to ride that really carefully. Yeah.
Could this one say, I didn't know it was a choice? Something like that, like, and accepting it, the kind of responsibility that.
So I'm going to take a chance here. And here's a classic stock one. I did it out of love.
Yeah, I did it out of love.
This is the place where Bert Hellinger says children don't have a choice. They don't have a choice because they do it gladly. They do it out of love. They'll die. There's a place where he says children will choose to die for the family system, right? Now, that's a dangerous sentence. Sometimes the timing isn't right. So
it felt really good.
Yeah,
it felt really good.
I took a chance there. Yeah.
Felt really good.
Yeah. And then the mother can say, you didn't have a choice.
You didn't have a choice.
Is that okay to say? Whoops, we just had a little something happen. So Laura, was that someone in your life showing up for a moment?
Yes.
Okay. So in the role, just notice that, actually, Veronica's representative, just notice that your mother was getting attention somewhere else for a moment. Now, I don't know what the quality of that attention was. I don't know if it was your child, Laura, or whatever, but yeah. Like your mother, it's the system is not limited to you and your mother. It's bigger than just the two of you. Your mother has other nodes, in a sense. How does that feel to notice?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it was just.
Yeah. Can you say it's not just me?
It's not just me.
Yeah. And mother, how are you? As I wrap this up.
For a while, I was feeling really resentful that she seemed to have so much vitality, and I just was feeling resentful.
Yeah.
But then it actually really helped to have that outside intrusion. It took me out of it, and I realized I do have attention from elsewhere. So now I feel better.
Yeah. Can you say, you're not my only connection?
You're not my only connection.
And Veronica, you can say, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah. So we could do this for another half hour, keep nuancing this, but I think I'm going to leave it here. Veronica, the client, how are you doing?
Mind blown. Yeah, this feels accurate. Very, very accurate. And yeah, blown away by the fact that it was my mom, and I had no idea.
It can be other things too, but this constellation revealed this angle on it. Okay.
Yes, it
Yeah.
did. Mhm.
So in your own language, just release these two and thank them for their representing.
Yes, Laura, thank you for representing my resentment. I release you from your role and leave it with me. And Susan, thank you for representing me. I release you from your role and leave it with me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I want to leave enough time for some breakout time. About 30 minutes or so for you to go into pairs and just try this with each other a little bit. I think if I kept answering questions, I would probably be repeating myself and things that I've said over the last couple of hours. So I think it would be useful to get into pairs if you're able to. And those sentences I invited you to write up in the beginning, to present them to each other with great simplicity like I did in the beginning. Like, what's the situation? And then the other person just play around with trying to come up with a sentence, a primary expression of things. I want to say a few things about this. And I may sneeze. Am I going to sneeze? No, I'm not going to sneeze. Okay. First of all, messy practice. Remember, we've lovingly told our inner perfectionists to take a break. Please invite them to stay on break. Both in terms of when you're in the job of trying to listen and offer something, but also in the receiving. Let it be messy. Don't be upset if they don't get it right, whatever that means. Yeah. Just let the two of you play with it a little bit, okay? The procedure. This isn't very procedural, but the procedure is say hello, decide who's going to go first, get started. The client share their situation in a couple of sentences. Don't get too complicated or enlightened. The practitioner, take the time to listen and feel. Slow down. Do you notice fear, grief, anger, confusion? What do you notice? Then ask any follow-up questions that you really need to ask to get a better sense of the situation. Like I had to ask Susan, was there a crisis when she stopped exercising? Or was there a milestone of some sort? I mean, that was just an obvious question I had to ask, yeah? But don't go down the hole too far. Then start trying some healing statements. Right? Primary communications of the system. It might be something that the client needs to hear. It might be something the client needs to say. Just feel with it a little bit. And you guys can decide how you do it, but like Susan and I did, the client can say, oh, that bit lands, but this other part, and you can go back and forth a little bit. The client can share how they land a little bit, completely noticing where something relaxes, if tears show up, yeah? Or there's a bracing, there's a resistance, yeah? You'll get about 15 minutes each, or, 3 rounds of 5 minutes each, however you want to structure this. Make sure you both get at least one turn to be in both chairs. Yeah? Don't just spend all one time on one person and get focused on their need and then the other person didn't get a chance to practice or receive, okay? I will set the timer for 30 minutes. You're gonna have to do your own timing yourself because again, I don't know if you're gonna do like 4 rounds or 2 rounds or however you wanna do it, okay? Just do as many as you can in 30 minutes. That's why I asked you to come up with a list of 2 or 3 or 4. Any questions about that? Anyone who prefers not to be in a pair. Everyone's going to need video probably. So Kitty, we don't have a picture for yet. You could probably do it with just audio. It's nice to see each other. It creates more safety in the system if you can see each other. Kitty, are you participating? Could you let us know? Kitty can't participate. Anybody else?
If there's an odd number, I'll sit out. Yeah. So it'd probably be easier for me not to, but I can.
Okay.
I can be the odd one out if it's helpful to be the odd one out.
Okay. Laura's got her hand up.
I just had a question about the last constellation. How did you know that I was the mother?
Two reasons. One, Veronica's representative, I was feeling it already. Veronica's representative said it feels mothery. And my apologies, I cheated. I know Veronica. We've worked before. And so I felt mother's presence pretty quickly. Now, I
Wow,
tried
okay.
to continue, and also I offered you are my daughter or something like that, and your role did not reject that.
Correct.
So
Yeah, it felt
sometimes
right.
if there's something that I want to, like, oh, I think the anger is your brother. Let's try it out. And I say, hi, sister. And they go, and the person goes, hi, sister. Yeah, no, not happening. There you go. Those are called tests. There were a number of reasons.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about this process? Okay, I'm going to put you all in breakout groups. I'm going to avoid Kitty and try to avoid V. Let's see how this goes. And V, no, never mind. Let's see how this goes.
I'm here if you have any question. I'm here.
One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. So Kitty, I'm gonna put.
Again, I can jump in if there's.
No, this actually works. I just have to deal with Kitty as well because, of course, everyone gets automatically assigned. So I put Kitty and V in the same room, which means Kitty and V do not need to accept this invitation because neither of you are participating and everyone else is now ready. I have to set it for 30 minutes and open all rooms. There you go.
Leslie, I just want to say I'm getting a lot out of this. It's
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Disruptive, my apologies, but I always like to, it's just learning from workshops. You want to just check in on small groups to make sure they're not really running aground. But you guys all look like you were doing great. So I hope you all got something out of that. I am going to ask for some questions or stories or insights or movements. But real quickly before I do that, I want to do just something real quickly. I'm putting in the chat my upcoming offerings. In particular, a lot of the questions that some of you have been asking are going to be gone into a much more depth in my, for me, summer, Northern Hemisphere, summer, winter for some of you, course, Constellations for Individuals. It's a 5-week Tuesday night course on doing constellations for individuals, but it's going more deeply into primary and secondary emotions, orders of love, healing sentences, while I'm also teaching specific formats about how to do this one-on-one, figurines, in the mind, footprints, all that sort of stuff. It's a really deep dive refresher. And most people come out just really glad they did it because now they're feeling more confident. There's a lot of practice, a lot of feedback. It's really a practicum. So take a look at that. That's coming up really soon. It starts next month. I offer online constellation gatherings every 2 to 3 weeks. You can come to those for $10 and represent online. And I have openings for focus clients, including the next one, July 1st. I've heard some of you getting stuff kicked up, which happens. at these kinds of things if you're thinking you need a constellation or you just like to come and represent. And then finally, I do have, if some of you have not had a training, you want a training, my constellation training starts in the fall. It's all online with an optional in-person module. So that's how it's being done now. So I wanted to make sure you got that information. I'll send it to you in the follow-up email as well. I did that. Yay! I shared info about myself. But what happened in your breakouts? Questions, miracle cures, wonderful, miraculous failures. Share a little bit so we have a sense of what that was like for you. Monica.
Yeah, I find that the healing statements for me, or the soul statements, are the biggest challenge. And it's really about, for me, trying to embody what's really happening for the client. And the kind of the fear of really naming, growing up in a system where there are all these elephants in the room and you can't name what's happening. And so now for me to relearn, oh, how do I actually, is it safe? Most people don't want named what's really going on, right? So then when we step into this work, I'm like, but that's what's required, is the real nitty gritty, right? And I'm really struggling with that. And also then I have my fear. I know we're not supposed to have fear, but I definitely have.
No. Include the fear. Include the fear. Yeah.
Well, with, stepping into the field. Fear that I'll be wrong. So because once again, in my family system and in my marriage, if you are wrong, you get taken out, I mean, it's, so it's really like unlearning all these.
Thank you, Monica. That's really useful self-awareness. And we all have personal safety patterns that bump up against what facilitating needs. It may not be that one, what you just named, but there's something, right? That when you start really going to facilitating, you realize, oh, my safety pattern from my family is not so useful, or it's getting in the way, or it's a place where I need to grow. This never stops. This is something I really want to name for everybody. There's no place where you go, oh, now I've got it all healed, so now I can do this perfectly or anything. There's something about this that's going to become a tool for you when you befriend it. And there is a reframe that's needed, which is, I heard you say, something like, I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't have the exact words. Nobody likes it when the truth comes out or the secret gets named. That needs some big time reframing. Because my presupposition in my experience over and over again is, if done in timing and in rapport, I mean, those things are important, the system actually welcomes it. Like, finally, who here has had the beautiful experience, you've set up the constellation, it's like, and then you bring in the perpetrator, the bad guy, the Nazi, the whatever, the slaveholder, and the whole system goes, finally, that's being included. And ironically, the system feels better.
And I understand in this work that we want the truth. I was speaking more in society at large, that often people don't really want the truth.
And I want to reframe that too. Because I think they actually do. What works in constellations is true for the world, but rapport and timing matters, even out there in the world. Now, in terms of your family system, I honor that was 100% the truth. Like, that's what you had to endure or deal with somehow. And so I just want to name that might be something worth bringing to Constellation sometime.
Thanks,
right?
Leslie.
As we hit our facilitator issues, I do this in my trainings all the time. Like, there are people who are afraid of making people upset. That's one pattern. Like, oh, I don't want to bring up the pain because people will feel bad, that sort of thing. There are other things. There are performance issues. My pattern is I wanna be seen as good, like as a good person. That's out of my own healing issues. As those arise in facilitating, they're worth constellating. So thank you for naming that and for working in that space. Who else could identify with what Monica said? Yeah. Being scared about opening the Pandora's box or letting something be seen and wondering what the reaction's going to be. Yeah, yeah, thank you. Any other shares, comments about that experience? Yeah, Fiona.
Yeah, it was great. It was lovely. We came up with a good sentence. I am struggling with my relationship with my son. And I was like, I can support him to do his own work, but I can't do it for him. It was kind
Oh,
of,
that is nice.
you know, it was, yeah.
That's a nice
I was
distinction.
struggling with this kind of guilt of not being able to give, or he wasn't taking from me, and it was all very complicated. But then you can reduce it to a simple sentence, and it's like, okay, I can live with that.
Well, and very frequently healing sentences are clarifying distinctions.
Okay.
Or what psychologists call
Yes.
differentiation. Oh, I'm me and you're the mother. And that's a
Yeah, yeah.
differentiation, right? So you made a differentiation between supporting and
Yeah.
doing all the work.
Yeah.
It felt good in your body.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, sometimes healing sentences are just about pulling something apart that's gotten globbed. Right? That's what happens in
Yes.
trauma. Things get lose differentiation. Things get identified with other things.
Yeah. And it gets more complicated than it needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Very nice. Other shares or questions? I know we're reaching the end here, but usually having a few shares or comments really helps sort of bring it to a close. Miracle cures, great learning failures.
I can share, Leslie. I'm still processing. It was a really powerful experience. Let's see. So I brought in, basically I had a conversation with my son's autism, which I had not been able to.
Wow.
I was been fighting with the autism.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, and then Newton really supported me in that process. So it was pretty cool. And I'm still processing.
How did you say it? Talking to or conversation with? How did you?
Oh, it was very childlike and playful.
No, I'm sorry. What
I
was the verb? Was it conversation? Was it talking? What did you say?
having a conversation.
Having a conversation with. Those are healing words. When you use those words, something in my body relaxed.
Mhm.
Instead of trying to understand or do it better or unpack or any other verbs we could come up with and we might naturally come up with, have a conversation with my son's autism. I went, ooh, that feels good. So very nicely done. Very nicely done. That's how subtle moving from secondary into primary can be. Oh, having a conversation with, rather than trying to understand or whatever else we might be trying to do. Oh, that gives me some room. Yeah. Oh. Any other shares? I know some people probably need to dive off. I do a little final ritual here, but I just want to give people a chance if there's a final share or question before we end, or comment about the last 3 hours. Maylene, yeah, just go ahead.
I think it's the exercise was very good. It's very powerful. I didn't notice that in such a short amount of time we can achieve so much.
Oh, sure.
And I think overall the class today was really wonderful. I feel like I learned a lot. It gave me a different perspective about facilitation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mei-Ling.
Oh, thank you, Leslie.
The limitations in small groups are the same even if you have 2 hours.
Mm.
with somebody. Really working with the fact that this work is embodied.
Mm.
And most of the time we have to end acknowledging there's more to do is part of the humility of the work, and being in a really good relationship with that. Otherwise you end up running 4-hour constellations that go past midnight and exhaust everybody, right? Which is being in good relationship with the limitations of being embodied people doing this work in embodied situations is a really good thing to acquire, while acknowledging there's always more. Yeah. So I'm going to answer these couple of raised hands, and then I'm going to do a final little ritual, and then we'll end. We'll probably end by 5 after. Sarah, I see your hand up. You just remuted yourself.
Did I fix it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hi. I just wanted to thank you I love your practicality. I love that nice grounded sense that you bring to constellations. I just really appreciated the session. So I just wanted personally to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but for the people it's amenable, that's a good thing.
It's the piece I need.
Yeah. Newton, you have your hand up.
I found really very simple and very profound healing sentences. Veronica found few good sentences, and it's already there's a big movement of healing already happened.
Yeah. This is the work many of us saw Bert Hellinger do. It's called chair work often, right? It's the work you do right in the conversation with the client. Jane Peterson has a real focus on chair work. She does whole workshops on it. And it's what people like Jan Jakob Stam and other organizational constellations folks do when they're not going to set up a constellation because that's too woo-woo for an organizational context, but they do systemic coaching, right? You can have enormous shifts if you're in contact with the larger systemics of the person's dilemma. And you can work at the systemic level even without having set up any representatives. So I'm glad you had some of that experience, Newton. That's really great. Okay, so I want to invite everybody. Thank you for coming. It's always so much fun to gather with all of you. Take a moment. We've been here 3 hours. Remember some of the lecture we've done, some of the little constellations we did with Veronica, Susan, and Laura, and then whatever work you did in your breakout. Just take a moment, return to your heart, and allow one image or aha or question or insight to come to your heart right now, the gift you're going to bookmark. Take a moment and let that come to you. What's the thing you want to make sure you remember or take with you? And then when you have that, if you can turn it into a sentence. And when you have that, go ahead and unmute and just share it. Let's do this popcorn style. What's your sentence? What's the thing you're taking? And no one's required, but it's nice to hear from people. It's a nice way to end.
It's an honor to represent my younger parts in this now.
Thank you all for helping me grow.
Life goes on.
I'm here for you.
The truth will set you free.
I'm taking care of my little one.
I can unbury the memories.
I can trust myself.
Anyone else? Before we sign off. Okay, thank you very much. Feel free to unmute and we'll have a messy goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Leslie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'll send the
Bye.
recording out soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leslie.